Summer 2017. A boat parade fills the waters of the Lake Washington Ship Canal. The occasion was the 100th birthday of a fascinating piece of local infrastructure.
Sometimes you got a sea line, sometimes you got a seal. You can have 4 or 5 ocean-going tugs. You can have a gravel tow. There's some really big boats which almost fill the whole chamber. It's what you don't get to see in your own yard.
The Ballard Locks turned 100 years old on July 4th, 2017. The locks and a park on the north side are operated by the Army Corps of Engineers. It's one of the most popular destinations around for tourists and for locals who keep coming back year after year.
Part of its legacy and history, they did it when they were little. Some people love to see the big boats. It's kind of a full meal deal type thing, especially in June, July, and August, because you've got the gardens are blooming, it's all nice, temperatures are warming up, got boats, and we got 1 to 3 varieties of salmon running. That's kind of unique and one stop, so we just try to provide a little bit of everything for both the tourists and the locals.
Brian Carter works for the Army Corps of Engineers. The locks are officially named for Hiram M. Chittenden, a local leader for the Corps here a century ago. And it was the Corps who built the locks and the whole Lake Washington Ship Canal in the first place. The idea was to connect freshwater Lake Union and freshwater Lake Washington to the saltwater of Puget Sound and to the oceans of the world.
We were set up to be a maritime navigation way. This was the old version of a freeway, a water freeway, where you could get your commodities from the raw materials to the new markets.
This connection meant new opportunities for commerce and growth. Property owners and businesses on Lake Union and Lake Washington all stood to benefit. But the story is a little more complicated than that.
Look out, man, the water's coming! Oh, splash!
The idea of marking the Centennial was first proposed several years ago by Michaela Woodward and other local historians. Woodward was intrigued by an invisible aspect of the story, the lowering of the level of Lake Washington that was caused by the construction of the Ship Canal.
I used to be the director of the Rainier Valley Historical Society, many years ago, and I had always heard about the lake being lowered when the Ship Canal was built. And I always kind of wondered, where was the lake? And, I sort of imagined it, but, you can't really see where things were once they're gone. And I had always imagined some sort of way of showing this on the landscape itself.
In August 2016, Woodward spent most of a Sunday afternoon marking a section of the old lake level near Seward Park with an athletic field chalker. She got help from a project at the Burke Museum called Water Lines.
They gathered up all this historical mapping data, old maps and other information, and they actually created a layer in Google Earth that showed you where the water was. So it made it really easy for me to scope out where I wanted to draw the chalk line. And it was Bicycle Sunday, so there were no cars on the road. Most of the line was along Lake Washington Boulevard, but there were a lot of bikers and pedestrians, and they would kind of come across the line and be like, what the heck is this? And you could follow the line and either run into me pushing my chalker, or I had placed volunteers along the route at certain locations with an explanation and old photographs and maps and stuff that people could get more information. And then there were also people who somehow thought that I was trying to advocate for, taking the locks out, raising the lake again. I was like, no, I'm just trying to show where it was. So here you are, you're my witness. It's not the most accurate line ever. Well, it might be the most accurate line ever.
Yeah.
For Michaela's project, Lake Washington was still there to be seen, and only its old boundaries had become invisible. It's a different story for the Black River in Renton. The Black River used to connect Lake Washington to the Duwamish River.
Where we are right now is it was the old Black River village site for the Duwamish people. This was one of the largest village sites that we had, and was a very, very important village site for the tribe. It's actually where my family comes from.
James Rasmussen is a member of the Duwamish tribe, native people who have been in and around what's now Seattle for millennia.
When they were clearing ground for these apartment houses, you could actually see the post holes for the longhouses, fire pits for the longhouses, which stretched from one side of the street all the way up against the railroad tracks. and 100 feet in the other direction. So you're talking about huge longhouses that were down here. It was a big village site.
That big village is invisible nowadays and has been for nearly a century.
It was a significant draining of Lake Washington, so much so that in one day the Black River ceased to exist. It went down so far that there was no river here anymore. They found out about it when the river just disappeared, and there were just puddles that were left in the river. And there were a lot of settlers who came here and saw all the salmon in the puddles and were gathering, you know, in, as they said, gunny sacks.
That was the end of Black River Village.
They didn't have cars, they had canoes. That's how they got around, and without a river, there was no resource for them or any way to get around at all. So it just ceased to exist.
During the Centennial observances of 2017, the focus was mostly on the benefits of building the ship canal and the locks. Michaela Woodward's project helped show people where part of Lake Washington used to be, but the chalk washed away with the next rain. For James Rasmussen, a chalk line can't really convey the loss of Black River Village. Like all invisible parts of Seattle history, telling that story will require something more than an art project or even a monument.
That is a story that's never really told in consequence with the Montlake Cut or the locks, and it really is something that needs to be told about it, because sometimes it's a history that's beyond just what's in front of your face that you have to be able to understand.
Watch CityStream Thursday nights at 7 on the Seattle Channel, or get video on demand and podcasts anytime at seattlechannel.org.